Hello everyone, let's get inside. We're coming to you from the heart of innovation, Innova's immersive cylinder space at the University of Ottawa. This incredible space is designed for cutting-edge research, training, and collaboration, featuring state-of-the-art high-definition technology. It feels like stepping onto the Star Trek holodeck. There's even a full-on hologram setup. Pretty cool, huh? What better setting to host the Summit on Climate Disinformation, which is happening right here, by the way.
I'm really pleased to see today is how from, I would say, a big group, but really working, and we had some experts in communication, in press freedom and media sustainability and so on.
But while this space feels like the future itself is under threat. My name is Touma. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Montreal-based media outlet Les Connecteurs, and on the sidelines of the summit, led by the Information Integrity Lab, I will be hosting guests from the fields of media, technology, and transparency policy to discuss the scale of the climate disinformation problem and the solutions that need to be put in place urgently.
There's a lot to talk about.
Climate change is the existential challenge of our time.
The online world and social media platforms in particular have served as a primary space for the spreading and flourishing of both climate misinformation and disinformation.
And climate disinformation cuts across every one of the other priorities: democratic resilience, national and international security, public health, and of course, climate action.
Science tells us that we must act now to limit the worst impact of climate change. I've been saying this for almost 30 years now, and it's all been, deny, delay, deceive, the strategies that prevented us from acting.
And AI technologies have only amplified the volume and scale of the misinformation fire hose.
And particularly as it's being used to develop and fabricate news and journalism, and how often the business model of the internet is monetization, and it's monetizing a lot of this information around generative AI.
We had a foreign company remove new Canadian journalism completely out of one of the most used platforms that operate during a time of wildfire crisis.
The fact that the media were censored on platforms like Facebook, and there were people who were like, oh really? Still not aware that for something like 2 years, the actual verified information has not been on their feed.
But now we have TikTok to worry about, and that's I know older people who take that as news, and that's what they believe.
Probably the most important barrier to action is not technology, and it's not economics. It's disinformation itself. It's the fact that we cannot have a political dialogue that leads to action and that allows technology to be scaled, solutions to be scaled, implemented.
So Jennifer, thank you so much for being avec Les Connecteurs, with Les Connecteurs. Let's talk about maybe the main challenge when it comes to climate disinformation specifically.
We know that we need better partnerships. We need coalitions. We need coalitions going from the global level right to the local level. How do we make sure that the public has access to data, to clear information that allows them to make decisions around climate policies?
So Climate Caucus, we're a national nonprofit. We were founded by and for local elected leaders. So we work with mayors, councillors, and other elected leaders coast to coast to coast to really help support them in enacting the climate policies that their communities are asking for and need. We need that, right? What we're really seeing is that both due to significant and increasing climate impacts and due to increasing mis and disinformation, the resources of municipalities are being stretched extremely thin when it comes to dealing with both of these pieces. And when we did a survey of our members, mis and disinformation and how to combat it in community is one of the things that they're the most worried about out of everything in their role. So it's a growing significance. There aren't necessarily the tools or the funding or the resources yet to really support local communities in dealing with this.
I think that there are a lot of challenges when it comes to climate disinformation and disinformation more broadly. One of them is the opacity of the tech companies that we have, and it's really hard to have access to the data, to have a better understanding of how these companies and their platforms are operating. And this is even a problem when we have owners of platforms who put these mechanisms, these very powerful machines, to the benefit of a political project, or to harm one specific issue, including our ability to address climate change.
The challenges that we will face today when it comes to information ecosystems.
So we need to understand better what's going on and how people are being targeted, and we need evidence-based action. We need to really understand what works to mitigate some of these risks.
I wanted to ask you, because I heard in your presentation earlier, you mentioned the global risk report that really, kind of confirms that climate disinformation is a threat right now. How bad is it?
Well, the Global Risk Report actually identified mis and disinformation more broadly even as a top vulnerability, but environmental risks were obviously very high up too in their findings. And I think that we know that the risk is incredibly high and the threat is really grave. We've seen already some of the impacts of climate disinformation and other attempts to undermine climate information integrity having an impact on climate action and achieving our internationally agreed climate goals. We do need more research though. We do need to understand better exactly the impacts, exactly what's happening in different information spaces, especially in the countries in the global south and in languages outside of English. And that's why a big focus for us is research.
So at the Trottier Foundation, science is at the core of our work. And climate change has always been very, very important to us. It's really one of our key programs and key goals. So we have committed, we have a pledge to grant $150 million over a decade from 2020 to 2030. So we're supporting climate action. This is why we're funding this event here, but this is why also we're going to continue to think how we can have a program maybe that will focus on climate information and fighting disinformation. But I believe things are now so intertwined, we cannot only focus on specifically climate disinformation. It's the infrastructure of disinformation that we need to understand, disentangle, and so that we remove this barrier to climate action. Because we know for a fact that climate disinformation has been there for 20 years.
You co-founded Imagining Another Life. That sounds really beautiful, dreamy, heavenly.
I like to think so.
But there are challenges associated with your mission. So please explain what you do. How does your work contribute to fighting or changing the narrative when it comes to climate disinformation?
Yeah. I think, honestly, the otherwise already exists, right? We have pockets of people who have already been self-organized, have been supporting each other in communities for generations. And obviously, there are powers that be that are trying to divide us. And I think that in Imagining an Otherwise, one of our main intentions was to find the people who are at the front lines of a lot of this work, reconnect them to each other, but then allow them to hold the relationship and we just steward it.
We discussed narratives that dismiss climate change realities. How do we change that? How do we have an influence, knowing that disinformation comes pretty much from everywhere now? On social media there are no borders anymore, so it's all over our feeds. How do we influence that and change the narrative?
I think everyone can do a part in that, so the people should have to check the information before sharing it. I'm working on an initiative that is called Science Up First. It's funded by the Canadian Science Association, and it consults different specialists on specific topic. So they work on topic that seems really problematic in the society. So when we doing that kind of mapping of what is happening right now, we focus on specific topic that we see spreading a lot online. So for example, the climate disinformation. We are working a lot about also the rise of hateful content about the minorities.
It's coming from what seems like a lot of different places and a lot of different people, but that ends up being a lot of the same people over and over, just on different issues. And so by combining our efforts and working together, we're recognizing that we're all working against sort of a common enemy that's out there just lying all day, every day on purpose for money. And so by working together, we can pool our collective power on different issues with our different audiences, with our different group members, and all together go at what is a pretty singular problem of people lying and being hateful for money. So we work both with platforms and with governments and with other nonprofits and with academics. So we're really trying to be friends with everyone who is working on this, in part so that we can all sort of push in the same direction in the same way and work together, as opposed to sort of all scattering in different directions. So we're trying to sort of, not necessarily herd cats, but try and coordinate so that everybody's pulling in the same direction.
So a lot of it is culture work. A lot of it, honestly, is the work of looking within. When you're telling a story and you're constantly reinforcing the thing that's bad, your body tightens, right? Like you feel that knot in your chest. You're thinking from your fight or flight. You're not actually telling the story of the otherwise.
I want to ask you about your work. What do you do to counter climate disinformation specifically?
Thanks very much. I'm really excited to be here. So my work, I'm the Chief Relationship Officer for the Disarm Foundation. What we do through Disarm is we've created a standard way of talking about the sort of overall challenges of influence operations, disinformation, information manipulation, really is a way to try and standardize and streamline how it gets reported on. So the real challenge we're facing now, one of the challenges we're facing now, is that analysts around the world who are tracking influence operations, whether it's in climate, whether it's in gender disinformation, whether it's in foreign states intervening, however it is, they're all looking at the same sets of things, they're trying to use the same data, but without a standard, without a relatively useful way to talk about it.
First is greenwashing and online ads, so programmatic advertising. So one of the immediate solutions, something I'm sure we'll cover, is thinking about more transparency and more accountability on that front.
So Check My Ads is the digital advertising watchdog. We are shining a light in dark corners of the digital advertising industry. And essentially, right now, advertisers have very limited visibility into where their ad dollars are actually ending up. And they might be inadvertently funding climate disinformation or hateful content even when they don't want to be. And so we're essentially trying to bring more transparency and accountability to the digital advertising.
So you expose them when they fund harmful content. That's amazing.
Well, we've built a coalition of more than 100 groups around the globe who are working on climate change disinformation. And we work on it on a policy level. We work on it on an educational level, where we're trying to pull apart what is climate disinformation, where does it come from, how can it be stopped.
And then you want to get more aggressive is now identifying, who the actors are that are propagating this disinformation, taking down those networks, addressing and outing and attributing those actors. So essentially bringing them out from the dark into the light, allowing folks to see what's there. And then also taking, whether it's administrative or regulatory measures to actually dismantle those networks.
And we look at regulating the field of it in the same way that you look at regulating any other industry. And I like to use an analogy of pork, planes, and pills. You look at these companies, pharmaceuticals who make pills, airplane manufacturers, and pork producers. We have the same standards for all three of those industries that we should have for social media companies that spread the climate change disinformation, or for the fossil fuel companies who generate it.
Climate misinformation is at this point turning the climate crisis into a catastrophe. It is working to delay climate action across the board in different geographies. And you really see that the fossil fuel industry has a playbook that they put to work consistently in different countries around the world. We hear the same narratives. We see the same political tactics being used to dissuade governments from taking action on climate change and to actually make people believe that climate action that is really important to protect them and their communities is somehow bad for them. The International Climate Politics Hub, ICPH, is a global network of organizations working in climate diplomacy. So we are figuring out how to make sure that venues like the UN, the G7, the G20, the BRICS summits are doing the right thing on climate change. And we're making sure that there are conversations happening between countries that need to be happening in order for the entire world to make progress on the climate crisis.
ClimateData.ca is the Canadian platform, the trusted Canadian platform, I should say, with scientifically based, peer-reviewed climate data, which in and of itself counters the amount of disinformation.
Of course, because it's verified information.
It's verified, it's trusted.
Yeah, in a nutshell, if you think today most people on their cell phone, they have a weather application to forecast what will be the temperature in the next week or the next 2 weeks. So you can imagine climate data as a very long-term climate forecasting tool.
So practitioners from all walks of life, from different sectors, be it they don't have to be a climate specialist or to use it. It's useful for people in the transportation industry.
Right.
For instance, building roads. You want them to withstand impacts of temperature, climate changes in the future. So
it's within reach
it's easily accessible, and it's trusted data. It's verified, so the users can be assured that the data they're using will lead to climate resiliency in the future.
So if you want to project yourself in the future, like in 10 years, 15 years, at a very specific location, like in eastern Quebec, on the west coast, wherever, and you want to know, obviously it will not give you the temperature, the high and the low, but it will give you statistical measures. Like for instance,
let's not be greedy, right?
Exactly. So on average, how many rainy days where you can get more than, let's say, 30 millimeters of rain within 24 hours?
Right.
Or what would be the last freezing day during the year, or so on. So it's a tool with the primary goal is that progressively people, decision maker, have access to this source of information to integrate it in their decision-making process as they work on projecting, building new infrastructure, or putting in place public health policies and so on. Then they would have this reference tools to better forecast what will be the climate.
A lot of the things that we do as someone who comes from community organizing, they already exist. The infrastructure exists, the relationships exist, the motivations exist, and the cultures exist. And we all do have shared goals. And so it really is about re-identifying how we can meet them.
Hey you, I'm Jennifer Irish. Today I fancy myself as Princess Leia. Why? To get your attention. Why? Because our information ecosystem and our natural ecosystems are deteriorating. At this summit, we have pooled the best of our collective knowledge. Researchers, frontline practitioners, journalists, technologists, activists. We've learned how to build resilient coalitions, how to use AI with integrity, how to translate complex science into honest, compelling public messages, and how to stop false, toxic narratives from spreading. Imagine if we could upload all that wisdom. If we could upload it all, say, into a droid, and ship it to a new world, perhaps to a galaxy far, far away. It's a fun thought, but there's no escape hatch. There's no backup planet. So this is not a spectator moment. You're not a droid. You're the only hope.
Thank you, Jennifer, or should I say Princess Leia. Well, the force is with you now.